Hey friends, welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. In case you're new here, my name's Jennifer. Today we are in my kitchen and we're going to be doing another canning project together. Now it wasn't all that long ago that we canned reduced sugar raspberry jam together. Today we're going to be making another jam. This is going to be strawberry vanilla jam. The recipe that I'm using is from this book here. If you're new to canning, I highly recommend this book. This is the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving. And it has lots of great information about getting started with canning, and it has lots of great recipes in it that are tested for safety. So it's a great go-to resource. A lot of the canning recipes that I use come from that book. So we are going to be using a strawberry jam recipe from that book today. This book includes a variation to make it strawberry vanilla jam, which we will be doing because it's so delicious. But if you want just plain strawberry jam, go ahead and leave the vanilla out. It's still delicious that way too. I just really love the uniqueness and kind of that extra special flavor that the vanilla gives it, so we will be making the strawberry vanilla variation today. The one other thing that we're going to be changing about this recipe is that we're going to be reducing the sugar. Now, if you're going to reduce the sugar in a jam recipe, you do want to make sure that you have a specific pectin that is made for reduced sugar recipes. The classic pectin calls for a lot of sugar. If you've ever made jam before, you may have been shocked at the amount of sugar that the recipe calls for. That's because the pectin really needs all of that sugar to set up. This is a specific reduced sugar pectin. I have Sure Gel here because this is what my local grocery store had. I've heard great things about Pomona's pectin as well. That's another reduced sugar pectin. And because I'm going to be cutting down the amount of sugar, we needed to get a special pectin to make sure that our jam will still set. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to grab some frozen strawberries out of my freezer. We are not using fresh strawberries that we grew. We're using frozen strawberries that I bought from Azure Standard specifically for this purpose. So I'm going to go grab those out of my freezer and I'll meet you back here. So I grabbed the strawberries from the freezer. This is what's left of my big 5-pound box of strawberries that I got. Now, normally every year we pick strawberries. We use a bunch of those strawberries to make strawberry jam. This year, I think we either didn't pick quite as many as usual, or we made them more in fresh recipes, or just ate more of them. So we did not have enough extra to make strawberry jam. So since I really wanted to make our classic strawberry vanilla jam that we make every year, I purchased some frozen organic strawberries from Azure Standard. Now, I will say the benefit of starting from frozen strawberries is that these are already hulled. If you've ever made strawberry jam before, the most time-consuming part is taking all those leaves and stems out. So the nice thing is that that part is done for me. So over here, I've got my canning station all set up. Here is my big stock pot that I'll be using as a canner. Since we're water bath canning this recipe, jam is a high acid food, so you're able to water bath can it. You don't have to pressure can it. Because of that, just a big stock pot will work fine. So I've got my jars all set up in here, and this is filled with water. Here is where I'm actually going to be making the jam. And back here, you can see I have I don't know if you can see that well, I have all my canning lids in there. And you don't need to boil those or anything anymore. I think recommendations used to say that you're supposed to boil them. It doesn't say that anymore, but I still like to heat them up a little bit just so they're about the same temperature as the jars when it goes in. So let's go ahead and get our strawberries measured into this pan here. Because they're frozen, we're going to have to let them defrost a little bit before we continue on. So let's go ahead and get started. Now this recipe calls for 8 cups of whole strawberries. In addition to reducing the sugar, I'm also going to increase the amount of berries that I'm using. This recipe, if you follow it as written, is supposed to make 8 of the half-pint jars of jam. I would still like to get 8 or at least 7 jars of jam, even though I'm reducing the sugar, which is going to reduce the jam volume quite a bit. So because of that, I'm going to be increasing the amount of strawberries that I'm using. So let's go ahead and measure these into our pan. Pour these in here as neatly as I can, hopefully. So that's about 4. Let's get these into our pan. All right, there's actually not as many raspberries left in here as I hoped, so we're gonna go ahead and use everything that's left. Okay, so I'm gonna say that this is about 10 cups of strawberries total. So as you can see, they're definitely frozen. I'm gonna turn the heat on low and cover this just to help them start defrosting. All right, so we've got our strawberries in the pan defrosting. While those are defrosting, I'm going to go ahead and prep our sugar and our pectin. In this bowl here, I have 5 cups of sugar measured out. Now see, this is a reduced sugar recipe, and it still takes 5 cups of sugar. If I did not reduce the sugar, this would have been 8 cups of sugar, which to me is kind of a staggering amount. I mean, it calls for 8 cups of strawberries, 8 cups of sugar. That's a lot. So we've reduced the sugar to 5 cups, which is still going to be extremely sweet. even taking into account the fact that we also increased our strawberries by 2 cups. It's still gonna be very sweet. Now the directions for our reduced sugar pectin say in order to prepare it, we have all of our sugar measured out. Into this separate bowl here, we are going to add a 1/4 cup out of this total sugar amount. And then we're going to add the entire packet of pectin into this sugar. All right, now we're just gonna go ahead and mix up our sugar and pectin, just get that completely combined. All right, so our sugar is ready, our pectin is ready. Now we just need to wait for our strawberries to completely defrost. So I'm just gonna let them defrost in this pan nice and slowly. I'll meet you back here once they're ready. All right, so our strawberries have been sitting for a little bit. It's time to check on them and see if they are soft enough to mash up. So let's take a look. All right, you can see they've defrosted quite a bit. There's quite a bit of liquid coming out of them now. So let's pull out a potato masher. We're gonna see there's still a little bit of resistance. They're still partly frozen, but I think that they'll mash up pretty well. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get these mashed up. Once you have your strawberries all mashed, the next ingredient that you need to add to your jam is lemon juice. Now, I am not a complete canning expert, so definitely research everything that I say. Don't just take it as law. But my understanding is that in a recipe like jam, it is not the sugar content that makes it safe and preserves it, it's the acidity. Because this is a high acid food, strawberries are high acid, that makes it safe for water bath canning and we don't have to pressure can it. Now, we are able, because the sugar isn't needed for safety, we're able to reduce the sugar in this recipe, but we are not able to reduce the lemon juice in this recipe. In fact, I'm actually going to be increasing the lemon juice because I increased the amount of strawberries. So I increased the amount of strawberries by about 25% by adding those 2 extra cups. It called for 8 cups. We put in our 8 and then an additional 2 to make 10 cups total. So I'm also going to be increasing our lemon juice by 25%. Our recipe calls for 4 tablespoons of lemon juice to be added to this. To increase it by 25%, we're going to need to add 5 tablespoons of lemon juice to our strawberries. So I'm just going to finish mashing these up. Then we're going to go ahead and add 5 tablespoons of lemon juice into this mixture here. Okay, so this is about how I like the strawberries to be. You can see there's still some chunks in here, some fruit chunks. I don't like to completely pulverize them because this is a jam, not a jelly, so we want a little bit of fruit to remain. So now I'm just going to go ahead and measure out 5 tablespoons of lemon juice into the strawberries. Now just a note, when you're canning, you want to use bottled lemon juice because the acidity is standardized. You do not want to use fresh squeezed lemon juice for a product that's actually going to be canned because this recipe has been tested using a standardized lemon juice acidity. If you're using fresh lemon juice, the acidity can vary quite a bit, and that could have the effect of making your product not acidic enough to be safely canned. So you always want to use bottled lemon juice. So 5 tablespoons right in here. So once our lemon juice is all mixed into the strawberries, we want to go ahead and take this sugar here. This is our 1/4 cup of sugar mixed with our entire package of pectin. We're going to add this into the jam before we start really heating it up. We'll just make sure that that's completely dissolved. So once our pectin is completely dissolved, we're going to want to bring this jam up to a rolling boil. What that means is that it's boiling hard enough that even when you stir it, it continues to boil and you can't stir down the boil. So it looks like our sugar and pectin is dissolved. I'm going to go ahead and turn up the heat and we'll bring this to a rolling boil. You want to make sure that while it's heating up, you still stir it frequently. We don't want any bits of strawberry scorching and sticking to the bottom of our pot here. So I almost forgot one of the most important parts of this recipe and the ingredient that is going to take this from strawberry jam to strawberry vanilla jam. So this is my homemade vanilla extract in here. We are going to fish out one of these beans and add it into our strawberry jam. Now if you don't have fresh vanilla beans, you could definitely use vanilla extract instead. But I really like the fresh flavor of using a fresh vanilla bean, and I also like just that look of those little black specks in there. Now look at this. This bean has been soaking in the vanilla extract. You can see the caviar is nice and thick and syrupy. I'm just splitting it in half lengthwise to make sure that a lot of this good vanilla flavor gets into our jam. A little bit of caviar got left behind on the cutting board. I'm going to make sure we don't miss that. We're just going to go ahead and stir this in. So this bean is just going to stay in here while this heats up and while it boils, and that's just going to infuse our jam with a really lovely vanilla flavor. All right, so I'm just going to let this heat up to a rolling boil. I'll be stirring it frequently. Once it's boiling, I'm going to show you guys what it looks like, and then we'll continue on with our next step. Now see how this is boiling really hard, and when I stir it, you can see how it continues to boil, so stirring doesn't turn down the boil. That is what's called a full rolling boil. So now we are ready to go ahead and add our sugar. So we're going to add all the sugar at once. Now, of course, adding the sugar is going to lower the temperature of our jam, and it's going to stop it from boiling for a little bit. Once all that sugar gets incorporated, it should return to a rolling boil pretty quickly. Once it's returned to a rolling boil, we're going to boil it for exactly 1 minute, and then we're going to turn it down to low just to keep it warm. Now you just want to make sure, we added a lot of sugar all at once, so you want to make sure that you keep stirring it. Scrape the sugar that's settled to the bottom of the pan, make sure everything gets incorporated. We don't want to end up with any clumps of sugar that aren't mixed into this jam. Okay, this is now at a rolling boil that can't be stirred down. We're going to set our timer for 1 minute, and we're going to boil this hard for 1 minute. We're going to stir the whole time. All right, so our jam is done boiling now. Our sugar is all incorporated. Our pectin should be getting ready to set. So we are going to go ahead and fish out the vanilla beans. We don't want to include the vanilla beans in the final jars, but a lot of that vanilla flavor really infused into our jam. Plus, I made sure to kind of squeeze the caviar out of the beans, so that will be in there as well. Just adding some extra flavor and some beautiful dark brown vanilla. I'm just going to grab these split vanilla beans out, and we're just going to discard them at this point. I don't know if you can see on the camera at all or not, but there's some nice dark specks in there from the vanilla. Now you can definitely smooth out your jam a little more if you like. I like to leave a little bit of strawberry chunk in here. That's completely personal preference, so it's up to you. If you want your jam to be smoother, just go ahead and mash it a little more thoroughly than I did at the mashing stage. So our jam is basically done. It's now time to get it in our jars and then to actually get it jarred up and canned. So I'm just going to reach into this canner here. This water is not quite boiling, but it is pretty hot, so the jars are heated up. You want to make sure that your jars are about the same temperature as your jam. You don't want to put hot jam into cold jars because it could lead to your jars cracking. Just going to ladle up some jam and get it right into our jar. So with this recipe, you're going to want 1/4 inch headspace, which basically means leave a 1/4 inch between the top of your food and the top of your jar. Once you have your jar filled, go ahead and take something like a wooden skewer. You just kind of want to slide it along the edges just to release any air bubbles that are trapped in there. It's called debubbling. Then you're going to take a damp paper towel and just wipe off the rim of your jar. You want to make sure that there isn't any sticky residue because that can interfere with your jar sealing properly. Once your jar is all prepared, you're going to grab a lid, center it right on the jar, and add your ring. You want to tighten to fingertip tight. That basically means that you don't have to use your whole arm to really screw it on, but you want it tight enough that it's going to hold the lid in place. All right, so we've got 2 jars filled, so we're going to get these loaded up in the canner, and then we're going to fill up the rest of our jars. All right, so we got our last jar filled. I'm going to go ahead and get that in the canner, and then I'm going to turn up the heat to bring it to a boil. So now that our canner is fully filled and our jars are in place, we're going to turn up the heat. We want this to come to a full boil and boil our jars for 10 minutes. So basically that's called processing. We want to process them for 10 minutes. That's going to just drive out any trapped air that's in there, and it's going to sterilize the jam. And then it's just going to create an airtight seal to keep our jam from spoiling. All right, so our strawberry jam is all finished processing. It boiled for 10 minutes. Then we let it sit in the canner for 5 minutes after we turned the heat off. So now it's time to go ahead and take these jars out of our canner. We're just going to set them on the towel over here, and we're just going to let them cool completely to room temperature. Now once we get these set on the towel, we're just going to let them sit and not disturb them. So in my experience, these jars should seal pretty quickly, but you want to check them after about 12 hours or so. Make sure that they've sealed, and any that don't seal, you can reprocess them if you want to. I would probably, unless I had a lot that didn't reseal, I would probably just stick them in my fridge and use them over the next few days. All right, so now it's time for the ultimate test. This is the extra jar that we stuck in the fridge. So this jam didn't get canned along with the others. It's still warm. It hasn't cooled down all the way, but it's cool enough that we can taste it. And you can see it definitely set up nicely. So I think that the sugar to pectin ratio is good. So let's give this a taste. That's really good. So it's definitely sweet. You could probably even, I probably may in the future reduce the sugar even more, but the sweetness level is good. It definitely tastes like strawberry. You know, sometimes you have jam and it's just overloaded with sugar and you mostly just taste sweetness as opposed to the fruit. So here you definitely taste the strawberry. You get that little subtle hint of vanilla, which really just adds a little bit of interest to the jam. I think it's really good. So I definitely recommend the vanilla variation. If you want to stick with just plain strawberry jam, that's completely delicious too. But either way, thank you guys for hanging out with me and making jam with me in my kitchen today. I'm really excited that we have a jar of strawberry vanilla jam in our fridge, and we have 8 more jars to go on our pantry shelves to kind of get us through the cold winter. You know, sometimes just all you need to get yourself through winter is just a little taste of some summer fruit. So that will definitely help. Now, if you're new to canning, jam is a great place to start. Fruit jams are so easy to can. They're high acid foods, and so you don't need a pressure canner. You can just can them in a water bath canner or in a stock pot right in your stove like we did today. So either way, that's a great place to start. If you are new to canning, I definitely recommend picking up that ball book that I showed you at the beginning or another similar book as well. But if you also want to make this jam and you don't quite feel ready to can yet, you can also go ahead and make this as a freezer jam. Just store it in the freezer instead of on your shelf. Either way, it's delicious and I highly recommend it. So I hope you guys are having a great day. I can't wait to see you again soon. Bye guys, I'll see you next time.